Every year, Belgian farmers still find them rusted cylinders buried in the soil, half corroded tanks that once contained jellied gasoline. Unlike artillery shells that can explode a century later, these relics are chemically inert now. But between 1943 and 1945, flamethrowers accounted for a disproportionate number of enemy fortifications destroyed in the Pacific Theater, not through explosive power, but through something far more primitive: fire. The M1A1 flamethrower didn't cause 70% of casualties in World War II. It didn't need to. It caused something worse. It made enemies choose between burning alive or abandoning positions they'd sworn to defend to the death. This is about the weapon that changed where wars were fought, forcing soldiers to burrow deeper underground, and why the very sight of it broke tactical doctrines that had held for thousands of years. Fire as a weapon is ancient. The Byzantines had Greek fire, a napalm predecessor that burned on water and terrorized Arab fleets for centuries. Medieval besiegers hurled flaming projectiles over castle walls. But these were siege weapons, static and cumbersome. The technological revolution came in 1901 when a German inventor named Richard Fiedler demonstrated something new: a portable device that could project ignited fuel in a continuous stream. Fiedler's Flammenwerfer used pressurized nitrogen to expel fuel oil through a nozzle, where it was ignited by a pilot light. The German army saw potential. By World War I, they had models that could shoot flame 15 meters. The principle was brutally simple: compress inert gas in one tank, store flammable liquid in another, use the pressure to force the liquid through an ignition source. Unlike artillery, which evolved toward precision and range, the flamethrower evolved toward one metric: psychological devastation per second of operation. The M1A1 represented American refinement of this terror. Developed in 1942, it used a three-tank system: two fuel tanks containing thickened gasoline, one pressurized hydrogen tank. The fuel was thickened with a mixture that would later be called napalm, though the M1A1 predated the formal napalm designation. This thickening agent was critical. Liquid gasoline disperses, it evaporates, it flows away from targets. Thickened fuel sticks. It adheres to concrete, to wood, to human skin. The M1A1 could fire for 8 to 10 seconds in bursts, projecting flame approximately 20 to 25 meters. Rate of fire is irrelevant when discussing flamethrowers. They don't fire rounds. They project continuous streams of burning gel that consume oxygen, create temperatures exceeding 1,000 degrees Celsius, and continue burning for 8 to 15 seconds after contact. Everyone expected the Pacific War to be fought differently. Island hopping, yes. Naval superiority, certainly. But conventional infantry tactics still applied, or so the assumption went. Take Tarawa in November 1943. U.S. Marines faced Japanese positions built from logs, coral, and reinforced concrete. These weren't trenches. They were fortified bunkers with interlocking fields of fire, often with only narrow firing slits exposed. Artillery pounded these positions for hours. Naval bombardment turned beaches into moonscapes. The bunkers remained operational. Marines landed and died in extraordinary numbers, over 1,000 dead in 76 hours, because suppression fire doesn't eliminate an enemy who's 40 feet underground in reinforced concrete. You can't shoot what you can't see, and you can't assault what won't retreat. The flamethrower changed the equation. At Tarawa, Marines realized that a single operator could approach a bunker's ventilation shaft or firing slit and discharge burning fuel directly into the position. The defenders had three choices: burn, suffocate from oxygen depletion, or evacuate through rear exits, where they'd be shot. There was no fourth option. The bunker, which had withstood 3,000 tons of naval shells, was neutralized by approximately 40 pounds of thickened gasoline. This wasn't about casualties inflicted. Many Japanese defenders died from carbon monoxide poisoning or asphyxiation rather than burns. It was about rendering fortifications uninhabitable. After Tarawa, doctrine shifted. Every Marine rifle squad in the Pacific was supposed to have access to flamethrower support. But here's where industrial logistics created an unexpected crisis. Flamethrowers required specialized fuel. Early models used raw gasoline, which was too volatile. It created spectacular flame but poor adhesion. The thickening agents were experimental. Aluminum naphthenate mixed with aluminum palmitate created a gel that would stick and burn longer, but production couldn't scale fast enough. By mid-1944, flamethrower units in the Pacific were sometimes rationed to 1 or 2 full loads per day of combat. Meanwhile, the Japanese were digging deeper. Iwo Jima's defenses included 11 miles of tunnels, some with multiple levels, ventilation systems, and chambers positioned specifically to create kill zones for any attacker who breached the first entrance. The more effective flamethrowers became, the more elaborate the underground networks grew. It became an industrial race: American production capacity for napalm thickeners versus Japanese capacity to excavate volcanic rock. The technical problem was unprecedented. How do you clear a position you cannot see, that has multiple exits, where the enemy expects you to enter through a predictable route? Conventional tactics were useless. You couldn't suppress a bunker with rifle fire when the firing slits were 6 inches wide. You couldn't grenade a position when the tunnels turned at right angles specifically to contain blast effects. Artillery was already being used, but high explosive shells that could collapse surface structures barely scratched reinforced underground positions. The solution required coordination between multiple weapon systems, but the flamethrower became the essential element. Communication was primitive by modern standards but revolutionary for 1944. Rifle squads used sound-powered phones to coordinate with flamethrower teams. Observation came from infantry scouts who'd identify firing slits and entrance points, marking them with colored smoke. The innovation was combined arms tactics at the squad level. A typical bunker assault on Peleliu or Okinawa followed a pattern. Riflemen would fix the enemy's attention with suppressive fire from one direction. A demolition team would approach from a different angle with satchel charges to blow open additional entrances or collapse escape routes. Then the flamethrower operator, usually accompanied by at least 4 riflemen for protection, would advance to an opening and discharge fuel into the position. The goal wasn't always to kill everyone inside immediately, it was to make the position untenable, forcing defenders to retreat deeper into tunnel systems where they could be isolated and contained. The M1A1 itself came in variants, though the distinction mattered more to logistics officers than frontline troops. The basic infantry model weighed 68 pounds fully loaded, 43 pounds of fuel and equipment, 25 pounds of hydrogen pressure. Operational range was 20 to 25 meters under ideal conditions, less in wind or rain. Duration of fire, 8 to 10 seconds total across multiple bursts. Refill time, approximately 5 minutes with a trained crew. The armored variant mounted on M4 Sherman tanks was designated the M1. These flame tanks carried 290 gallons of napalm and could fire for approximately 60 seconds total, with range extending to 45 meters. The mechanical flamethrower mounted on LVT amphibious vehicles, the LVT-4, could project flame while moving, turning beach assaults into mobile cremation operations. But the psychological impact remained consistent across platforms. Fire bypasses cover. Reality diverged from theory immediately. Early operations assumed flamethrower teams could approach bunkers with minimal suppression. Tarawa demonstrated otherwise. Operators were shot before getting within effective range. The casualty rate for flamethrower operators in the Pacific exceeded 90% in some units, not because the weapon was poorly designed, but because carrying 68 pounds of flammable fuel makes you slow, and being slow on a contested beach makes you dead. Tactical evolution followed. By Iwo Jima, doctrine required smokescreens, dedicated suppression teams, and often armored support before a flamethrower operator would even begin his approach. The weapon that was supposed to simplify bunker assaults instead required elaborate choreography. Then there was the ammunition crisis, though calling it ammunition misses the specificity. Napalm production was centralized. Thickening agents were petroleum-based chemicals manufactured in specific refineries. Transport to forward bases in the Pacific required tanker ships, specialized storage, and mixing facilities. A flamethrower operator on Saipan might have the weapon but no fuel because the supply ship was delayed by submarine activity. Or he'd have fuel but no hydrogen cylinders for pressure because those were manufactured separately and shipped on different vessels. The logistical tail for flamethrower operations was absurdly long given the weapon's simplicity. Industrial mobilization meant converting peacetime chemical plants to wartime napalm production, training workers, many of them women, to handle volatile compounds, and establishing quality control protocols because improperly mixed napalm could clog nozzles or fail to ignite. The Japanese response was predictable and rational: go deeper. If surface positions were vulnerable to flame, build positions underground where ventilation could be controlled, where multiple chambers would prevent a single discharge from clearing the entire complex, where blast doors and right-angle tunnels would limit fire penetration. Okinawa's defenses represented the culmination of this evolution. The Shuri line included positions with 3 and 4 levels, some chambers 50 feet underground, with ventilation shafts disguised as natural fissures in rock faces. American forces encountered bunkers where a flamethrower discharge would clear one room only to have defenders retreat to a sealed chamber, wait for the flames to exhaust, then reoccupy the firing position. The counter-tactics became grimmer, multiple discharges, often combined with demolitions to collapse tunnels entirely, or simply sealing positions and bypassing them, leaving defenders to die slowly from thirst in the dark. I have completed the first part of the script, approximately 1,800 words. I am now stopping completely and waiting for your confirmation or command to continue with the next section.